Just like Google, AI looks to Wikipedia because it is relentlessly on topic. It is very economically written. It has links to related topics. At any given time, all of the citations that appear in ChatGPT, between 5 and 15% of them go to Wikipedia.
Wow.
I mean, way more than any one other site. 2025 was really like a watershed year for just the use of AI in business workflows in general. This was the year people kind of figured out, oh, here's what I can use it for.
Welcome to Artificial Insights, where we have conversations about how AI is changing economics, work, and us. I'm your host, Daniel Maneri. In this first episode of Season 5, we have a very special guest, and one that comes at AI from an angle that you wouldn't normally expect. Bill Beutler is a business leader and writer who's the founder of Beutler Ink, a digital agency known for ethical and effective Wikipedia public relations strategies. Now, when you think of AI, Wikipedia might not be the first thing that comes to mind, but it's important for two big reasons. The first, every AI is trained on Wikipedia. It matters what's on Wikipedia because that goes right into something like ChatGPT. And the second, maybe harder to see angle, is that Wikipedia is referenced a lot by AI when it searches. So it's a really big deal what's on Wikipedia, and Bill helps ensure that what's there reflects his clients properly. And because Bill's working directly with Wikipedia, he's seeing something that most of us aren't seeing when we just use AI. And that's that Wikipedia is actually in danger of maybe not existing eventually. That would be a huge deal because Wikipedia is not a primary source. Wikipedia is a reference to other sources and a collection of what should be true based on those sources. But what happens when AI reduces the amount of clicks that those sources get, and even reduces the amount of clicks that Wikipedia gets? Well, you get less journalism because those people make less money. Then Wikipedia has fewer sources, and eventually that cycle could continue, and there would be no sources, therefore no Wikipedia. Thankfully, we're not there yet, but Bill's the guy who's got an eye on what's happening and what we might do to avoid it. All right, let's get to it. You might have heard it then that with a podcast like this, there's a question that I think is on everyone's minds, which is, Bill, are you an AI?
I mean, probably at this point. It used to be, do we live in a simulation? Now, is the person I'm talking to actually AI? Yeah, well, Nano Banana does some amazing things, so I can't prove to you I'm not.
Yeah, that's fair. Not on a call anyway.
No.
Maybe it'll get down to that am I dreaming thing, and then just punch somebody. It's okay, you're not an AI because AI is not going to punch you.
Yeah, I mean, it's life is a Philip K. Dick novel now.
Yeah, I do enjoy stuff. But just to start things off for us then, could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Bill Beutler, and I am the founder and president of a kind of a unique digital agency. We are mostly PR, but we're not traditional PR. Our primary focus is and always has been helping brands to navigate the choppy waters of Wikipedia. So the online encyclopedia that anyone can edit, that's the phrase that Wikipedia editors use to describe their project. It has a major caveat, a major asterisk attached to that if the subject of the article is yourself, or it's the company where you work, or it's your boss. Then there's a whole set of rules around conflict of interest. So the Wikipedia editors do not want marketing and PR people to come in and start making edits, creating new articles on subjects they have a financial connection to. So how you deal with that, if you still want to, let's say that the article on Wikipedia about your employer is wrong, like it's got, something's missing, or it's got the wrong date for the founding. Editors would like you to, instead of going in and making the change, to create an account and say who you are, who you work for, and to ask volunteer editors to make the changes for you. Daniel, easier said than done. It's there, the rules are there, it's clear what you're supposed to do, if you can even find it. It's obscure, but there. Anyway, long ago when I first started doing this, these rules weren't even that clear at this point. But I kind of had a feeling that this was the right way to do it. And so way back in 2010, I quit my job and started out offering this service, which I've been doing on the side for a little bit. And this is 2010. And I got a feeling like there was a market for this. The Wikipedia was already pretty influential, and there's nothing else like it. I used to say, even Google has competitors. Wikipedia has no real competitor. Over time, I managed to grow it into a company we're 18 people today. And, we do some additional content marketing, a little bit of social media, a little bit of like website design, but mostly that is for around the kind of visibility of our clients, where our primary focus is helping them to fix problems on Wikipedia and stay on the right side of the rules while doing it.
And as someone who has not actually tried to edit Wikipedia, what are the problems that pop up when Wikipedia is not right?
Oh boy. So you've never clicked the edit button and gone in and tried to change
Nope,
the thing?
not at once. I've seen ones that need it, and
Wow.
I just went, that's too much for me.
I'll tell you what, the truth of the matter is they try to like lower the barrier to entry so much that they do kind of invite trouble sometimes. So technically speaking, you don't even need an account to make an edit to most pages. It is there's this imbalance between how easy it actually is to just go in, make a change, hit save, it's live immediately, versus actually being effective, like contributing in a meaningful way. Wikipedia's been around for almost 25 years. Maybe by the time this goes live, it'll be 25 years because it's January of 2001 when it started. But it's developed. There's now over 7 million articles. Many of them are really well developed. Even if they're not perfect, there's at least a lot of content there. Actually being able to know what to do with there now is a lot harder than it used to be. The challenges, I think that the challenges go in there's challenges to do with everything involved in it. So I'm going to try to pick and choose which challenges I focus on. I want to take a moment and, consider the plight of the volunteer Wikipedia editor who is there on Wikipedia because they have some information they want to contribute, or they like to, they believe in the mission statement of compiling the world's information and making it accessible to everyone in their own language. You're just going about your job. It's not even a real job. They're all volunteers, right? Trying to improve, subject matter in some area. And then you come across one of two scenarios. There's two scenarios where you might run into what we'll call broadly paid editing. The first one is the worst one, and it is where someone has just decided to edit the article that is about their brand to make it look really positive. Flip side would be edit a competitive brand and make it look really bad. So this is called undisclosed paid editing. And unlike vandalism, which can be relatively easily caught, and in fact, most vandalism fighting on Wikipedia is handled by bots. Humans don't even have to go in and play whack-a-mole anymore. A certain 4-letter word shows up on Wikipedia, like a bot comes along to zap it within a few minutes. But someone making the page way too positive or way too negative is a lot harder to tell. An algorithm is not going to catch that the same way. So all of a sudden, the volunteer editor has to decide, are they going to take time out of other projects to try to clean up this page? Most of the time they don't. And so you can oftentimes tell, you can see the after effects, the detritus of this situation when you come to a Wikipedia page with a warning tag at the top. And if it's the conflict of interest variety, it'll be someone with a close connection to this topic may have edited this page, or someone may have edited this page in exchange for money. You see these. They are so hard to get off there because they're not even about the content. It's about the person. It is about the content. It's about, oftentimes, they become too positive, too negative. So that's the first part. And there's a whole group of editors that are constantly trying to battle this. If your listeners go look up the conflict of interest notice board, they will see a bunch of editors listing out, this page here. This one editor just is going to town on it. It looks like they work for the company. I left them a warning, but they're still at it. Can somebody help? That's one. That is what I'm trying to stop, actually. It's my business and my staff, the way that we are helping our clients. We are trying to steer our clients away from, creating that problem. But it doesn't mean that there's not something required of the volunteer community either. So let's say you're a volunteer editor and you are, going through Wikipedia and you're on a talk page. And then there is a request from someone who says that they work for the company. Now you have to decide, do you care enough to get involved? And do you want to take the time to investigate the issue and decide whether you think they have a good point or not? That is a challenge I'm really mindful of because we really do need volunteer editors to hear us out and potentially make the change that we were asking for if they agree that it's going to make Wikipedia better for Wikipedia's readers. Because it is not uncommon for a brand representative, a PR person, to have heard that they need to go ask for help. But then they'll go to the talk page and they'll just write way too much. Or they won't even actually explain what it is they want changed. And so that just wastes time. Daniel, my job is to get things done, not waste people's time. And it's hard because there's so many rules to know about. Wikipedia has its own markup language, which is a little bit like Markdown, if you know Markdown, but it's also still its own thing. So, yeah, I mean, that's just one. I could talk for an hour on challenges around Wikipedia, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's a bit overwhelming to even think about. And then, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
if you edit the things that you're connected to, you might even just get whacked down, might do more harm than good.
Can happen.
Pretend that I don't know why Wikipedia is important right now. It's always kind of
sure.
been important. I've read Wikipedia pages. I did a lot of that for science back in university. Probably a little bit less controversial. But why is it so interesting now?
Usually. Yeah. I mean, the moon landing page is still one that has to be defended every once in a while. Fluoride is, never not been controversial since the 1950s.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What's the new importance of Wikipedia now? Because it feels like something has changed recently, and I hear people talking about it, but I don't know that anybody's ever given me the inside scoop of why it matters so much now.
Yeah, totally. I suppose if Wikipedia was just this project that people were working on but no one ever read, then it wouldn't really matter. But Wikipedia it's been important for a long time. Like I said, we're up on the quarter century mark here to kind of set the table for what was then and what's now. Google is the one-word answer for why Wikipedia matters historically and still to this day. But it's much different now. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Google was famously the 10 blue links. You search for something and you get one page, 10 links. You can go to page 2, not that anybody ever does. In fact, nobody ever goes past the third link, really. And Wikipedia very often would be in those top 3 links. Wikipedia was actually beneficial for Google, where people come to Google, they search for a thing, they want to find good information. Wikipedia was pretty much a sure bet for supplying Google's readers with something that was going to be, more accurate than not. I don't want to oversell. It's not infallible, hardly. But also, if Britannica was wrong, you couldn't change Britannica. But if Wikipedia is wrong, you can change Wikipedia. Anyway, so that's kind of where historically it comes from, just its prominence in Google search. And then there was a period for a while, and still to this day, now that the 10 blue links is gone, and Google has the other people ask and the knowledge panels, they actually are drawing a lot of information from Wikipedia and their own knowledge graph that kind of lies invisibly behind it is powered in part by another project from Wikipedia called Wikidata, which is a database in the same way that Wikipedia is like a thing to be read. All well and good, but certainly Google has been kind of obscuring the links to Wikipedia a little bit. It used to be that the info that box, the knowledge panel, would say Wikipedia as where the source came from, and you could click right through. And now these days you'll see the little Wikipedia W oftentimes, but now that they're using Gemini to write things, they're kind of compiling things from multiple sources. But anyway, right there, I've just kind of got us to what is the thing that's changing. It is AI. It is large language models for sure. I'll tell you, it was probably over 5 years ago that someone first told me that Wikipedia was important to AI. Honestly, the word LLM didn't, cross my brain until several years later. But I was talking to actually a Canadian market research firm that was really early in using AI. We're talking 3 years minimum before ChatGPT came on the scene. And they explained to me that Wikipedia was really important in the development of AI because it was a really excellent source of training data for when you're building the large language model. You basically have it read everything. And apparently it reads Wikipedia even more than it reads other things. And it made sense to me why it was, just like Google, AI looks to Wikipedia because it is relentlessly on topic. It is very economically written. It has links to related topics. So it's very easy to construct this web. A knowledge graph, a web of connections and things. So it helps the AI kind of learn what the world is through the lens of Wikipedia. Obviously, it comes with all the biases and gaps that Wikipedia has. That's why it reads a lot of other things too. And so that was interesting. Back at the time, didn't know what to do with it. I didn't think about it again for a while. ChatGPT comes along and it's like it blows everybody away. Oh my God, I can't believe this does this. And it was still not even another year or two before 2025 was really like a watershed year for my business, certainly, as we'll get to, I think, here, but for just the use of AI in business workflows in general. This was the year people kind of figured out, oh, here's what I can use it for. And even if it's just cleaning up your email to a client so it's a little easier to read, people started figuring out that it was more than just a trifle. But the real big thing that happened was, in order to clean up a lot of the hallucinations that AI was notorious for, they went multimodal. You'll hear this phrase among AI developers where, the model itself could only do so much, but then when it can't get better, it like adds on another tool. And so one of the tools it added on was search. And so all of a sudden, not only is Wikipedia being used for the training data that builds the model itself, but now it's also being used to go grab information from in real time to compose an answer that is likely to be more accurate than if the LLM was just trying to pull some tokens together from the darkest recesses of its training. And so Wikipedia is it depends on which model you're looking at. ChatGPT, which is it's the best consumer product. It's the most popular, it's the one that your mom knows about. Probably, I'm sure my mom knows about it. I haven't asked her. It's the brand name. It's the household word. And ChatGPT loves Wikipedia. It really loves Wikipedia even more than Gemini or Perplexity or Claude, which are the other big ones. I've seen some data where, like, these days I'm talking to a lot of companies that do AI monitoring tools. And so they're in a position to quantify these things. And so at any given time, like all of the citations that appear in ChatGPT, between 5 and 15% of them go to Wikipedia.
Wow.
Way more than any one other site. And then some other data I've seen shows that approaching half of all answers that it gives that do citations will link to Wikipedia. So it has been a lot more people coming to us because now they really know they need to get into ChatGPT. I'm sure it'll die down a little bit, but it's hot right now. And so people are like, we want to improve our standing in AI search. I've heard Wikipedia is a great way to do that. Yeah. And so that starts a lot of conversations.
And given all those difficulties and now the demand for it, what can you do? Obviously, you can't go and break the rules and write some glowing review about a company that, I don't know, they pay you for. But what does that look like when you work with someone?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the truth of the matter is, for the most part, it all looks the same these days. I think there are certain different motivations, and there are a few different things people will ask us about or ask for. Just like our work, we look at as being more PR than it is marketing. We're trying to provide good information for people who want to find it rather than trying to get into your feed and, push information to you. But I will say that like ROI is a question we're getting more in this era being the last 6 months really, than we have for the last really 15 years we've been around. But really there are kind of two main vectors of interest that we get. And the first one is, help, I don't have a Wikipedia article. Can you make me one? And the second is, help, Wikipedia is describing something about me all wrong. And there is this very interesting imbalance we find, kind of the actual interest versus the work we do. It's a mirror image in that most of our inquiries are about creating pages, but creating pages is harder than it sounds. Wikipedia doesn't want an article about everything, and most brands don't qualify, and yet most of our actual work is improving existing pages. And just because there's way more companies that want to be there than meet Wikipedia's guidelines, so it's easier to improve an existing page than try to create one where there wasn't yet.
And just to play a little brainstorming, I guess, let's say the pod wanted to get on Wikipedia. Is that something that you can immediately say, yeah, that doesn't count? Or how would you go about thinking about it?
You know what I'll do? The first thing I will do is I will just I'll go to Google News and I'll do a quick search. Your listeners should be aware of kind of what the controlling factors are. There is a guideline on Wikipedia. It's called notability. The notability guideline determines which subjects are eligible for standalone pages and which are not. And so if you're to go to this page and read it, I hope you have about half an hour because it's like super long. It is not a simple checklist. It's if you have this and this in this condition, and it's also like this over here, maybe. It's actually not written. It's actually written a lot more positively. Like the phrasing is, a subject is presumed notable if it meets this criteria. Presumed notable makes it sound like, oh, good. Like they're looking for a reason to let me in, right? But no, this is like a super exclusive nightclub where that, velvet rope is, not coming unclinked unless you really demonstrate that Wikipedia is missing something if you're not in there. And so what they're looking for, if I am to try to summarize this notability guideline in a sentence or a concept, it is a critical mass of news coverage from professional media. It's got to be independent from the subject. So like your company newsletter, so Daniel, your podcast is not going, Artificial Insights is not going to be a source for Artificial Insights. But let's say that say Fast Company or Fortune or, pick a regional newspaper, writes about, this podcast, which is interesting, which is, doing XYZ. The other piece, of course, is that you kind of need to have something that stand out. Like notability as a Wikipedia guideline is not the same thing as lowercase notability as importance. But there is certainly overlap. In order to become notable, someone in the media has to think you're interesting enough to write in depth about. When I go to Google News, what I'm looking for is, do I find just a bunch of press releases and, like Q&As, or, do I find industry, do I find high quality news sites or low quality news sites? Do I find what's clearly publicity, or do I find what's clearly journalism? And so Wikipedia it loves journalism. It really wants to be one composed of facts that it is certain, reasonably certain are accurate. So that's one. And then also, does someone other than the people behind the brand care about it enough to, can we demonstrate that it's a real matter of public interest? And again, so Wikipedia editors don't want to be the ones making that judgment call. So they basically outsource that to working journalists who, I should say, never signed up for that particular aspect of the job. No one was consulted at the New York Times about, do you realize that you're going to be one of the, major vectors of, to use that word again for whatever reason, of what Wikipedia is going to deem worthy of writing about. And it's not just the New York Times. It's, it's Bloomberg, it's, the Globe and Mail, it's Toronto Star. I don't read a lot of Canadian newspapers, but if it's a daily paper, then that has a pretty good chance of being notable. But even then, not every piece that runs in the paper is going to count. So like an op-ed is not really very useful. That's going to be probably written by someone who's not a journalist, maybe even your CEO. And let's just say your CEO gets quoted in an article about, so Daniel, you get quoted in an article about the general trend of, AI podcasts. Great. If that article is all about you, that's really pretty good. But if you are quoted and you're just one among many, Wikipedia considers that to be a passing mention or incidental coverage. So it's tough. It's really not easy. And that's one of the big challenges we have, is turning people away nicely.
And if that hasn't happened, do you also work with people to get kind of press coverage?
So I was going to save this a little bit for at the end. I know you like to ask about what are things you're working on, but I actually launched a new company just this fall. And it basically seeks to solve that problem right there. Because people write to us all the time, can you create a page? Default answer is basically, no, I'm sorry, you need more coverage. And the problem is that if we say go to your current PR firm and have them focus on getting you more earned media, have your publicists get you more coverage. The problem is that just like journalists, just like newspapers weren't, created with the idea that Wikipedia was going to be looking to them for information. What counts as good PR does not necessarily equal the same thing as what Wikipedia is looking for. If you're a publicist and you can get your client quoted in an article that's on the subject of their business, that's great. That is increased visibility. That is something that your client is likely to be happy with. But again, if it's just a passing mention or just a quote and there's not, deep information to draw from to source, to verify information in a Wikipedia article, then it doesn't do you a lot of good. So we just found that like saying, ask your PR team to work on earned media would ultimately result in links that, stories that didn't satisfy the coverage. So earlier this year, I teamed up with a PR consultant. Her name is Molly Lacronier. She owns her own PR shop. She's worked with us a few times, and the most successful version of passing someone along to PR was when we would, work with her. And so I was like, hey, you get this, and here's this problem we've been trying to solve is we just keep sending these people off into the ether. And surely some percentage of them we could actually help if you were game to try this on. So in the fall, we launched, the name of the company is, and this will make sense, the Notability Company.
I get it.
Yeah, you get it, right? TheNotability.co is the site. And, I'm taking some time away from running Beutler Ink. She's taking away some time from her clients at her other firm, Anomaly. The annual conference for public relations people in the U.S. called PRSA was in D.C. in October, and we launched there. So we are going to be really putting out marketing material for ourselves in the new year. I'm about to go on paternity leave, so we're going to take a small pause during the holidays. But then we'll get out there and try to spread the word of like, hey, if you want to get a Wikipedia, it's still difficult, but you will go from impossible to a fair challenge if you work with us.
That's really cool. And just to shift gears a little bit, going back to the other side of the clients you mentioned, the ones that do have something on Wikipedia about them already and maybe aren't happy with it. What's the damage that could do or the danger of having something inaccurate?
So there are a handful of examples of where Wikipedia had something wrong and then that got repeated in news articles later. There was a Maurice Jarre, Jarre. He died a few years ago. This is a little bit of a dated anecdote. But when he passed away, his obituaries included information about movies that he did not score. Because Wikipedia had what looked like legitimate information but was fictitious. There are a handful. So I'm talking about hoaxes. Hoaxes are really damaging where they occur. They're fairly rare, but every couple of years you learn about, the longest lasting hoax in Wikipedia history was just uncovered. There's a fictional war in India called the Bicholim conflict. This was famous enough for Wikipedia, one from a few years ago. You can look this up, Bicholm. I don't know what that word, I don't know if it's a real word or not. That's what somebody called it. But it took years for this thing to get uncovered. For companies, it is, similar in some ways where people can add false information about them to a page, and then that can be believed later. And, the audience for Wikipedia, it's not just it's internet users, but who's internet users? That is your customers. It's your employers, your employees. I mean, your employers too, if you're, your investors and journalists and researchers, anybody who is interested to learn about you could pick up false information. And sometimes it doesn't even need to be false. It could just be disproportionate, where something that was actually not a big deal is made to be a major part of a person's career just because that's what someone added once and no one maybe yet has really taken time to improve the page overall. Well, this is where we come in. A good example, we work with the U.S. phone. I won't say who just because maybe I'm not supposed to. a major U.S. wireless carrier. There's not that many. You can figure it out. When we started working with them, this is over a dozen years ago now, like the page was just kind of like this comical hodgepodge of like things people saw in the news and added something and then never came back and wrote again. And so it was like molehills were mountains and mountains were molehills. And so it took us like, we ended up rewriting the whole article over the course of a period of a year. By rewriting it, I mean, we proposed changes to volunteers and they approved them as we went the iterative process. But like prior to that, you would not know what were major or minor incidents in this company's history. And it's a lot more well balanced today.
And have you worked with anyone that has seen that impact come through AI?
How do you mean by that exactly?
Well, I'm thinking sometimes I'll just talk to ChatGPT about a company or about something I'm thinking about, and it'll source Wikipedia. I've heard of people getting customers because of that, for example.
Yeah.
Have you worked with anyone who said, yeah, I can attribute this now to some kind of AI?
Yes, and that person is me. Because if you ask ChatGPT, what is a good Wikipedia consulting agency, who can you hire to help your company on Wikipedia, I've seen it with my own eyes, and we've heard it from prospects that, yeah, not every time. Sometimes it'll hallucinate a little bit. Sometimes there's a couple of other agencies that are out there, but Beutler Ink often is the recommendation. Besides that, like, yeah, we're increasingly working with, I think I mentioned some of these AI monitoring tools. A lot of them come out of the SEO space. And so a lot of them are bringing customers to us because they're bringing clients to us because their customers are seeing Wikipedia show up in the citations. And it's just like it's another thing for them to, one, worry about, but two, it is really an opportunity. It's everybody wants to be found for the right things. And so, whereas historically we'd worked probably the most with PR agencies where we have the same goals, but they don't have our skills. Increasingly, we're working with, I would say, SEO agencies that are turning into GEO or AEO agencies, depending on, answer engine optimization and generative engine optimization. No one has quite figured out which phrase is going to win the day, but they're both kind of in use these days. So yeah, that's another way for people to find us for sure.
Where would you recommend that someone start thinking about how they interact with Wikipedia and should they do something about it?
Speaking for brands, for people who have a conflict of interest themselves. Yeah. Okay, so I am going to self-promote just a little bit here, which is there's a resource on the Beutler Ink website that I've created to answer just that question. It's called the Wiki Resource Library. If you Google Beutler Ink and Wiki Resource Library, you'll find it. And it has multiple sections. It has a very extensive FAQ of the kinds of questions that we get asked in new business conversations. Everything from why do I need to disclose my conflict of interest, or why can't I just edit the page myself, to what exactly counts as a reliable source? Why isn't my podcast a reliable source? Yeah, things like that. So like, just to kind of cover all the background is one thing. And we also have our own version of the policies on Wikipedia that are most salient for brand managers. I mentioned the notability guideline and what, novella that it is. We have a page in the Wiki Resource Library that explains what that is really going for. And unlike the notability guideline, which is written for Wikipedia editors to read, ours is written for brand managers to read. So on top of that, we also have a series of how-to guides for things that we think are probably too small to really be a project for us, but are also too fiddly for someone to just, read the Wikipedia guideline and do it themselves. So a classic example would be, how do I add a new photo of a person or logo for a company? They're very similar, but they're different enough that they need different answers. The Wiki Resource Library, go there. It'll walk you through that process. And it's still kind of hard to do, but if you're committed and, spend some time, that's a great way to just get your bearings and decide whether you want to do more yourself or whether it's just better to ask these people at Beutler Ink to do it for me. Of course.
Like that. The other big topic bucket on my mind was, how do you see all of this evolving? As you said, the past 6 months have been different than the previous 6 months. And What do we
Right.
see happening?
Boy, if I was better at crystal ball gazing, I probably doing, I would be sitting in an office with like stunning views of the coastline rather than my soundproof panels behind me. But, all right, I'm vamping. AI is not going to get less important. It's going to get more important. And I do think that it's going to change how the web works. Like I think Wikipedia editors in particular are kind of bracing for a world where human beings read Wikipedia less. And I think that is a huge challenge for really any website, any publisher. I know that right now this is affecting publisher sites, many of which are journalistic in nature, in a way more immediately than it's impacting Wikipedia because it's directly taking away advertising revenue. The eyeballs are going elsewhere. And so that's an issue more on those kinds of sites because Wikipedia does not have advertising other than the pledge drive they do at the end of the year. It was happening earlier today as I last checked in. They don't depend on advertising, but they do depend on those news sources that I mentioned. So I think one of the challenges that I'm really interested in, and I'm trying to think about whether there's something that could be done about it, is how do you verify information for Wikipedia if there are fewer and fewer publications that Wikipedia considers to be reliable? And so what I would like to see, and this is by no means a prediction, but this is like an idea that I'm offering up, would be for like publications to think about how what I really want to see is a publication that is created whose job it is to verify facts on Wikipedia. This is like a little personal hobby horse where I think it would have to be funded through some combination of philanthropy and like the PR industry and the AI companies. And it would be in all of their interests for this thing to exist. This is a thing where I couldn't be the person to create it. There would be let's say, a conflict of interest there. But I do worry about Wikipedia losing sources. A lot of Wikipedia editors worry about what happens if they need more people to come be editors in the future. Like right now, the traffic has dropped a little bit. The number of editors is about the same. But like what happens in 5-10 years when people don't find Wikipedia the same way, or at least in as big a numbers, that could be an issue. I think that, again, Wikipedia is about to turn 25. I do think that it needs to think about whether its volunteer first and only model is the only way forward. I like to think about other open source communities, and Wikipedia is more open knowledge than open source, but there's a lot of similarities. Something like Linux is supported heavily by Dell is a major contributor to Linux. Red Hat is a company that exists solely to support the Linux ecosystem. There really is no comparison on Wikipedia, but I do think that one good news development could be out of the AI era that it kind of wakes people up and says, oh, all of a sudden we need to think about the long-term health and whether we can just rely upon a teenager stumbling onto Wikipedia, finding that, oh, my vandalism, because I know editors who got involved because they like vandalized it the first time, realized that it worked, and it was like, well, this is interesting. Well, let me see what I can actually do here. I have friends who started this way. If that kind of interaction is not happening as often, can you bet the entire future of the, humanities knowledge base on that kind of thing? I don't know. I do have some worries, but I also think there's a lot of smart people thinking about it. And maybe my biggest worry is that Wikipedia is kind of too set in its ways to think about how to provide for its future. And of course, I do think that like more people should be able to have Wikipedia be their job. I'm very unique in that Wikipedia is kind of my job. And like there are ways that could be beyond PR for that to be the case. There are other motivations for sharing knowledge, and Wikipedia's got to figure that out. So
I think the challenge is the important part, and I like how you put that. It's humanity's knowledge base would shrink over time if people don't look beyond the AI.
Well, and Wikipedia is being used to do is just like I said, that journalists weren't consulted on whether they wanted to be responsible for what Wikipedia says, and PR firms have not figured out what they're supposed to do. Are they supposed to do anything? Likewise, Wikipedia is being asked to do things that it never contemplated at the outset. Google at least existed when Wikipedia started, even though it was very new. They kind of grew up alongside each other. So there's a much more of a mutual kind of beneficial thing. There's areas of collaboration between them. AI, however, is brand new in the scheme of things. And so, a thing that the Wikimedia Foundation, that's a nonprofit behind Wikipedia, did was they were concerned that the AI bots that were crawling Wikipedia was putting too heavy a strain on its servers. So they actually created like a separate Wikipedia data set. They sort of cleaned up and optimized for bots. I think they removed images. And they offered it up and said, hey, AI bots, please crawl this version of Wikipedia and not the one that our readers are trying to use. But they can't force them to use it. And because of the way that Wikipedia's charter is set up and the way that it's licensed, they can't actually demand payment for it. So they're trying to figure out how they interact. But Wikipedia didn't ask for this. It didn't ask to be did it ask to be the world's knowledge base? Actually, it said yes. And it's freely licensed, so anyone can use it for any reason, including commercial, as long as you kind of say where you got the information from. But I do think that it is grappling as a movement with the fact that it is being used for things it didn't imagine, and that's putting new strain on its contributors. Yeah. That's a big challenge for the road ahead.
And I think I've never thought about the fact that Wikipedia has no competitors. Why is that?
Well, I've been using that line in some way, shape, or form for over a decade. And actually, as of this fall, it's arguably no longer true. Not that there have not been other attempts to compete with Wikipedia, but they've all been, woefully inadequate. The first effort to compete with Wikipedia was its estranged co-founder, Larry Sanger. He left Wikipedia really early on, became a critic of it. He launched his own thing called Citizendium, still on the web. You can go see it, but edited very infrequently. He tried a couple times to launch a competitor. There have been a few. But then this last fall, Elon Musk rolled out. He made good on his promise to go after Wikipedia, which he used to love, by the way. Not 5 years ago, he was tweeting about how Wikipedia is such a great resource. And 3 years later, he's like, Wikipedia is left-wing garbage. Okay. Well, he of course runs his own AI company, X.AI, and so and Grok, being his AI, his LLM, he launched Grokipedia back in the fall. And you know what? It certainly got a lot of bad press because it has a tendency to cite neo-Nazi websites from time to time and other issues. If you read the January 6th article, it's very, no one knows if anything bad happened here, but, just some people were wandering across the U.S. Capitol building. And so on and so forth. It's politically tendentious in a way that Wikipedia, I would say does have a broad center-left bias, but it's not as acute and not as pointed, I think, as Grokipedia is, it's a bit of a mess. However, it's the first one that debuted with, hundreds of thousands of articles. It covers many topics that Wikipedia does. It also heavily borrows from Wikipedia. Many of those articles are just copied straight over and then adjusted a little, if at all. But just the fact that it is much more detailed. Actually, I'll tell you one thing that the Grokipedia does quote unquote better, at least different, is a lot of these articles are about, say, minor celebrities, say people who are not really famous, but they're government officials, or they were, they had some business role. They'll have a Wikipedia page. But the Wikipedia page will be kind of a mishmash of then this happened, then that happened, and it won't be, overall very coherent. Grokipedia, by being an algorithm that just goes and, hoovers up sources. Again, many of them are not very high quality. Even the ones that, some of them are actually hateful, yes, but a lot of them are just Reddit threads. And Reddit threads are not fact-checked, right? So it gets a lot of things wrong for those reasons. But it also will write out much longer, more detailed, kind of more coherent sounding entries than Wikipedia. And so while I think there's much to criticize Grokipedia about, and I wouldn't, trust its sourcing or the non-existent guidelines behind it, it's unclear. It's very much a black box in a way that at least Wikipedia will tell you what it thinks it's doing. I think the fact that it will write a more detailed and coherent sounding bio for a media figure, and for a couple of our clients, we've looked at the Grokipedia equivalent and said, there's things we would do differently here, but it's just if it's instructive to see a comparison because there really has not been a useful comparison. Wikipedia has kind of existed in its own vertical, its own vacuum. There's not going to be an article about, such and such former mid-level government official in Citizendium or some of the other upstarts. But Grokpedia, because it's AI, has the ability to, to write many more articles much more quickly. So I think it's useful as a counterweight, as a counterbalance. It certainly has an audience for sure. There are people who don't like Wikipedia, do think it's biased, or they find that Wikipedia is not representing their subject very well. And I am sympathetic to some more than others, but I think it would be useful for Wikipedia to take it seriously and not to just dismiss it out of hand because Elon Musk is a big jerk. He is, but he's created something that is worth thinking about, again, as a counterweight, not a replacement.
Huh. Is it possible to edit Grokpedia the same way, or is it run by totally different rules?
Yeah, so you cannot go in. Nobody can create an account at Grokpedia. Okay, let me back up. If you create an account on Grokpedia, you're creating an account with x.ai. And it's all tied together with X, formerly Twitter. And so, yeah, like you can create an account there. You cannot, however, go in and make direct changes to pages. What you can do is you can highlight a passage in Grokpedia and then explain why you think it's wrong. And so we've been experimenting with this, myself and my director of strategy. We've kind of picked some client pages and some other pages and, pointed out things that we know are wrong or out of date. And so I would say we've had a mixed bag. It takes a little bit of time to get changes made, but the same is true of Wikipedia. I'm not going to say that it's any faster. We had one that was accepted because we had a clear source, and it probably took a couple weeks to get reflected. Honestly, there's no reason why an AI shouldn't be able to go a lot faster than a human. So, and in Grokpedia, I think it's still calling itself like, version 0.1. So maybe it'll get better in this regard. But we were able to get a few things changed. We had one that was not changed because there was incomplete sourcing. And I was like, okay, not bad. It didn't let us sneak that by there. But there's another case. There's a podcast I listened to where the host mentioned there was like a biographical detail about his family member that was wrong. And there's no public source for this detail. And so I went in and I pointed out this is wrong. I cited that podcast. I pointed to the fact that the Substack post that Grokpedia thinks that it's citing makes no such claim. And 3 weeks later, bupkis. No change has been made. I think if you can point out to it that it's wrong and here is the actual correct fact and it's a real thing, it might do a better job than if you just say you're hallucinating this, which it's a hallucination. Yeah. Maybe if it doesn't, it's hard to prove a negative. So if it doesn't have any source, it might not do anything. I don't know, more study is needed. And, Grokpedia had a moment in the spotlight and the traffic went up and then it came down quickly. We will see if it, continues to be a thing. I think that it's going to be, its usage is going to depend heavily on ideological or partisan affiliation. And it's very much part of the culture wars. And so for people who find it useful for culture war reasons, it's going to be relevant. But I do not see Google and Meta and Amazon all switching away from Wikipedia as their kind of shared body of knowledge. One thing about Wikipedia being open source and free to use and not a big tech giant itself is it's a website that the tech giants are all able to use. Grok is owned by Elon Musk, who's very much in the game. And I think that if you're Google, why do you want Gemini to be looking to a resource that is written by one of your competitors? Yeah. The Wikipedia is like the lingua franca. They can all, it's a language they can all speak. And I don't think that will change, but I'm keeping an eye on it because, like I said, I used to be able to say it has no competitors, and now it at least has the semblance of one.
Is there anything else you'd like to say that I haven't asked it?
No, I was holding on to Notability Company for the end, but you asked the right question too early. So no, this has been great. I mean, it's a good. So I hope I didn't go on too much at length because I certainly can. You can wind me up and let me go, and I will.
No, that was great. Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Thanks. This has been great. I really had fun talking to you today.
Awesome. Well, how can people follow along with you?
So if they want to find me personally, really the best place to find me these days is LinkedIn. Just look me up there. Probably using that more just because, I don't know, I used to use social media a lot back in the day, and now if it has a business purpose, and then LinkedIn, I'm surprised. It feels like it's getting used a little bit more like a social network these days. And LinkedIn also is an input to AI. So I think that's an interesting one as well. The Beutler Ink website, of course, I've already mentioned it before, BeutlerInk.com, BeutlerInk.com. There's a little bit of non-standard spelling in there, or at least unusual spelling. And then the Notability Company, that is thenotability.co.
I started this podcast because of an image that came to me in a dream. Back when cities had walls, everyone passed through the gate. Talk to enough people there and you'd understand the city. I wanted to stand at the gate and understand not just how AI was changing, but how AI was changing us. If you know someone building or leading with AI, or if this episode was useful, an introduction, a share, or a quick review on your podcast app all help keep these conversations going and help others find them. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Daniel Maneri or by email at daniel@maneri.house. That's Daniel at manary.haus. Thanks for listening.